mayoral candidates, families, or Realtors family, dignitaries, and attendees. My name is Georgia Richardson. I'm on the board of directors for Associated Real Property Brokers, as well as the co-chair for the legislative committee. This town hall with our local mayoral candidates as our panelists is just one of the several very special events for Realtors Week. The Women's Council of Realtors had a dynamic prayer breakfast this past weekend to kick us off. And we are so pleased to have created an opportunity for our members and attendees to meet our mayoral candidates and to discuss important housing and other City of Oakland issues and concerns. So before we get officially started here, there are a few housekeeping webinar control instructions. Everyone will be muted during the program. And when the host gives permission during the Q&A, which will be towards the end of the program, you will receive a notification and you can unmute yourself to speak. And at that point, all of the attendees will be able to hear you. Please note your questions in chat. If time permits, we will try to get to all of the questions. If you wish to speak, raise your hand, use the hand raising function, and you will be unmuted to speak. If you are directing your question to a particular panelist, please note that with your question in the chat. If you're on a mobile device, you can use *6 to mute and unmute, and you may use *9 to raise your hand. So with that being said, we're going to open up with prayer, and we're going to ask our chaplain, Willie Wilcox, to please do the honor of opening our program with prayer. Willie.
All minds and hearts prepared for prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you, dear Lord. We thank you for waking us up this morning. We thank you for clothing us and putting us in our right mind, dear Lord. We just thank you for the small things. We thank you for the air. We thank you for each breath that we take, dear Lord. We thank you for just keeping us, dear Lord, and continue to keep us. Now we ask that you be with us as we participate in the town hall. As you said, if 2 or more are gathered in your name, that you would be present. So I know you're going to be present in this town hall meeting, dear Lord. Dear Lord, allow us to continue to move forward with democracy and housing and just building wealth for the community that we serve, dear Lord. Just continue to bless us, continue to guide us, just continue to keep us, dear Lord. Now we know and that you will answer each and every prayer that we ask for. So we claim it in advance. These and many more prayers. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Willie. I would now like to, with no further hesitation or delay, we want to get right into the program, and I would like to present to you our phenomenal ARPB president, Madam Imani Bro-Smith, and she will share a few words and provide more information about our local Realtors chapter and its affiliation with the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. So Imani Bro-Smith, our illustrious president, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I need you to introduce me every time I speak. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Again, my name is Imani Bro-Smith, and I do have the honor of serving as president for Associated Real Property Brokers. We are the Oakland leg of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, and this organization has been on the ground, founded nationally in 1947, and been in Oakland since the late 1950s. Again, on the ground, our motto is democracy and housing. We advocate for Black home ownership and just building generational wealth. And so again, welcome everyone. Part of the mission of our organization is directly tied to advocacy, which henceforth brings us to why we are here this evening. So just brief history about our organization, and then we're going to get to it because you all did not come here for me. You came here to hear our potential mayors speak. So our Realtors history, as I mentioned before, 1947 is when we were founded, and actually founded as an equal opportunity and a civil rights advocacy organization for African-American real estate professionals, consumers, and the minority communities that we serve. Very instrumental in including the participation of Black people in the real estate industry, and also responsible for many of the anti-discrimination and fair housing laws. Now that's our history. What are we doing now? So nationally, our national annually comes out with a report, the State of Housing in Black America, asking for everyone to pull out your phones, go ahead and scan this QR code, and then you thank me later. But please feel free to share this information. It's really, really vital. And it's also going to help lead some of the discussion that we have today. So this week, we are celebrating Realtors Week, which is a week that our organization has annually, and it is an opportunity for us to celebrate ourselves and our commitment to our community and educating our community. And so we have a free event going on this Saturday. Here's the information, whether you are a homeowner, a home renter, whether you desire home ownership or investing, this event is for you, and it is going to be in East Oakland at the Black Culture Zone. Here's more information. You can scan this QR code and join us. I'll also put the link in the chat, but again, it's free. We have a live DJ, we're gonna have kids activities, and we're gonna have a lot of wealth building resources. And that is one of the important aspects about our organization, is that we seek to really get out there, educate our community, talk about generational wealth, talk about, again, why we're behind the 8 ball, why Black wealth as far as homeownership is in the 40% versus our white counterparts, 70%, but we talk about it and then we educate. So again, please feel free to share this event. And I thank you all for the opportunity to let you all know about our organization. And I want to thank Ms. Georgia Richardson and also our legislative chair, Eric Harris, because we set a goal to make sure that we stayed involved with those that are leading our community. And so hence why we have full participation today. So I want to thank everyone who joined us this evening, and the big response that we have from this event just shows that the people of Oakland are ready for progress and for change. And so again, thank y'all for joining us, and we look forward to the dialogue. Excuse me, and now I am going to pass it on to our moderator, and also, excuse me, I muted myself. I now have the responsibility of passing the torch. I am going to bring in our moderator for this evening, Ms. Shaniqua Badger.
Oakland, good evening. Well, it's kind of good evening. The sun is still out, but in all practical purposes, we're going to say good evening. Today, I am here as your moderator. Thank you all for joining us today. You could have been anywhere else, but you decided to have dinner with us and talk about the policies and change that we need in the city of Oakland, and that we want to hear the potential candidates or the candidates for mayor of Oakland are going to bring us all of the information from their platforms and their visions for Oakland. So if you're excited, please say so in the chat. We want to see you in the chat. Now, I know most people say that they don't want to see you in the chat, but I specifically asked that the chat stay open, because if this can't be a town hall without a voice from the people. So we want to hear what you have to say, but we want to make sure that you keep it clean now, because we will exercise the ministry of a removal and a block if we need to. So with that being said, I want to start this off by introductions. Now, one thing I do know is people who create policy and enforce policy, they like to talk. They like to talk just as much as us real estate agents. But I'm going to ask that when we ask questions and when we open the floor for introductions, that we keep it at 2 minutes if possible. So we're going to start with my upper left-hand corner. Greg, take it away.
All right, good evening, Sister Badger, and good evening, everybody. It's good to see you. I want to take a moment just to acknowledge, thank you, Brother Wilcox, for opening us up with prayer. I also want to acknowledge the Ohlone people, our relatives who are the ancestors on this land, who were here as Fisher people and others who were stewards of this land before any of our ancestors got here. I also want to acknowledge to my Muslim brothers and sisters, Ramadan Mubarak. It's the fasting time, third day of the Ramadan season for fasting, and as well as Shang and other folks from the Cambodian and Lao community, the Khmer New Year's. So there's a lot of celebrations going on right now, and just in general for spring. My name is Greg Hodge, and I would be honored to serve as the next mayor of Oakland. I've been here for some 40 years working in this community, and what I hope to bring to this conversation and to leadership here is the idea of listening to a broad range of voices to be able to lift up the best and most innovative ideas, as well as the time-tested ideas about work for housing, for safety, for economic opportunity, and then to lead with implementation. To actually make sure that we can implement the good ideas, many of which are already on the policy books and ordinances and part of our city charter. It's for me, I think a big part of this is to, as we acknowledge our ancestors, acknowledge the people who came before us, that all of this requires a lot of hard work. And I think every candidate on this call and everybody who's not participating tonight intends to work hard. And a friend of mine a couple of days ago, if you can see this, gave me this bag of cotton, and this is like cotton that's on the bowl, right? So this is cotton that somebody picked in South Carolina, gave it to my friend, she passed it on to me, and I have it on my desk right now as just a symbol of the hard work that Black people have put into this land, into North America, the hard work that our Asian, our Latinx, all of our brothers and sisters, no matter what community we come from. Oakland is rich in diversity. I think that what we're all waiting for and expecting is a sense of hopefulness, a sense of healing. As we talk about the ideas and how we reimagine what we're going to do, I hope to bring not just transactions, but transformation to what it is that we do. So I'm going to respect the 2 minutes. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to pass it back to Sister Badger, and I'm going to try to model good behavior in terms of not talking too much.
All right. See, I like the way that this is getting started. So I'm going to keep it going. Lauren Taylor, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. First of all, thank you to the ARPB, its members, its leadership for hosting this forum this evening. I received my real estate license in 2006. And so I have experienced a lot of what you have gone through in terms of really building a practice and being committed as members of the Black community to home ownership, wealth creation, and really sort of the growth of the Black community. As a third generation Oaklander, so a product of the town, the future of this city is deeply personal to me. My grandparents moved here in the 40s. They moved here from Louisiana and Mississippi. When they first landed, they landed at Harbor Homes, a government housing, the projects on the Port of Oakland, where the Port of Oakland is today. And when they moved here, they moved understanding and in search of the promise of Oakland, the promise that families can move from public housing to home ownership, from public schools to promising careers, and from poverty to prosperity. The reality is that that promise and that potential does not exist today for so many Oaklanders. And that is why I am running to be Oakland's next mayor, to make sure that we realize the potential of our promise, that we build a united Oakland that really works together, city government, residents, businesses, civic organizations, all in an effort to uplift every Oaklander in every neighborhood. And I will do that the only way that I know how, doing that by bringing together people, rolling up sleeves, addressing the tough problems head on, focusing on results over rhetoric and progress rather than politics. I've been doing that since day one as a council member. I was doing that before coming into office as a biomedical engineer and a management consultant, and I will continue that as Oakland's next mayor. And so I look forward to continuing the partnership that we've already created, working together in addressing a lot of the challenges that face the community, especially home ownership, homelessness, and wealth creation, and intergenerational wealth creation. Looking forward to partnering. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to pass the torch, or I should say pass the mic, as they say on the TikTok. We're going to pass the mic to Alyssa Victory.
Good evening, all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Good evening. Thank you so much to ARPB for inviting me tonight. Good evening to everyone who's watching now and who will watch later. I am Elisa Victory Villanueva, and I am running for Oakland Mayor in the November 8th general election. I was first introduced to this space, this community and organization through the Women's Council and your amazing mission of democracy and housing. It really spoke to me as someone who has grown up in Oakland. I was raised in North Oakland in our Bushrod Park community, and I became unhoused at the end of high school with my entire family because we lost our house to foreclosure. That was the first and only home that we had ever bought and owned. It was our anchor, allowing me to attend church in West Oakland, to be a part of Oakland youth nonprofits, and it caused years of instability for myself as I tried to graduate and go on to become the first in my family to attend college and become an attorney. And so I personally am impacted by a lot of the housing issues that we have in our city. And I thought we were in a housing crisis decades ago when that happened to my family. But now we're in an even worse crisis, with 70% of our unhoused residents estimated to be Black, who look just like me and a lot of us on this call. But we're only 20% of the city's population. That's not by accident, it's by design. We've been living in a city that's operating under a design of injustice, of inequality, of exclusion from opportunity. I'm running to redesign our city. The mayor's seat is open. We can all have new leadership, a new way of approaching these issues. I want to address homelessness with housing first policy. I want to preserve and expand our affordable housing units in the city. I want us to expand different models of housing to social housing, workforce housing. I also want to establish public banking to help finance some of those new models. I look forward to this conversation tonight. I'll be dropping my information in the chat so you can connect with me, attend some of my upcoming events, and talk to me in person, because there is some limits to Zoom and having a lot of other candidates here tonight. But I'm looking forward to the conversation, and thank you all again for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to pass the mic once again to Trevor Reed.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for hosting us and launching Realtors Week off with our prayer breakfast. It was empowering. It was encouraging to meet many of you and to be encouraged to be a recent member of ARPB Women's Council, and looking forward to working with and supporting our efforts more. I am an overcomer. I am a resilient single mother, and I'm a community builder, and I'm running for mayor to deliver transformative change for all of us. We know that Oakland is at a crossroads. We have been facing incredible but not impossible challenges as we strive for solutions that tackle keeping us housed, preserving, prioritizing, and protecting our ability to stay rooted in Oakland, and having Oaklanders being able to stay working in our city, closing the wealth gap, keeping us safe, keeping our city clean and beautiful. And the most marginalized that we know has been our Black community, with the incredible disparities and inequities we faced, keeping us from crippling under the weight of homelessness and housing insecurity as we work to prioritize all of us thriving. I was raised in a large family. I shared this before, that I am the oldest born granddaughter of 129 cousins of just my father's siblings. I grew up living 20 to 30 deep in a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment or home. And we knew that the value of love meant making sure that everyone was taken care of and that no one was left out. And that is a value that I lead out on. I have a tenacious determination to overcome seemingly impossible situations and helping others to do the same, fighting for those who are enduring, like my family, the deep trauma of losing our loved ones to gun violence, those who are faced with the threat of homelessness and housing instability, food insecurity, unemployment, domestic abuse, mental health issues, their business doors closing, and having to work multiple jobs like I've had to provide for my family. Those lived experiences motivate my passion with how I show up fighting for justice, challenging the unfair practices and policies that have been before us, and delivering more equitable outcomes for our community. My experience in my childhood enduring that housing instability and reliance on government assistance programs has motivated me in how I disrupt those issues for those in our community. I'm also watching one of my daughters come into her own sense of housing stability with home ownership that I'm certain we can bring about more in this conversation. I want to share that I've worked with members of ARPB to help uplift women through a program that I launched called Triumphant Women. I co-founded this program with another woman like me who have endured a number of the issues that I know you work to overcome in our community, and partnering to see Black women, young women, intergenerational women come into home ownership and even housing stability through that program. I worked for Senator Skinner in the State Assembly on policies and funding that benefited Oakland for housing solutions and housing policies prior to coming into office. I know that this is a time of great change and great transformation. And I know that I am that leader to help bring that experience of lived legislative and leadership policy and life-driven experience to transform how we show up for our community and for all of us throughout Oakland. I look forward to getting to connect with you more through this process.
Thank you so much. And we're going to pass the mic once again, Sheng Tao.
So I'm going to time myself. Thank you so much, everybody, to ARPB for hosting us tonight. It's so amazing to be in virtual space with you all. My name is Sheng Tao, and I am running to be Oakland's next mayor. I am a daughter of refugees, have a big family. I have 9 siblings. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I was a single parent and formerly unhoused. For my son and I, we lived from, we couch surf, and not just that, but we lived in my car for a time as well. I'm a community college graduate, graduated from Merritt College here in the city of Oakland. And in my speech, I did say we need to all remember to come back down to the hill, to go back down to the hills, to the bottom of the hill, and make sure that we serve our city. And so I do have the live life experience and the experience at City Hall to be the effective mayor who can truly unite the city and effectuate the results. We need to have a leader who can effectuate the results that are so needed here in the city of Oakland, because we all know that Oakland is an inflection point, and we have an opportunity to vote for someone who has the know-how, the track record of getting results and working for its residents. And as one of 2 renters on the city councils, access to home ownership, that is a personal issue for me. I still try to struggle to one day hopefully be a homeowner. And so we know that creating intergenerational wealth starts with access to resources and strong pathways to job opportunities and home ownership, specifically home ownership for those who have been underserved, undervoiced, particularly our Black, brown, and low income families here in our beautiful city of Oakland. And I want to say that I do have the sole endorsements of working families who are grocery workers, bus drivers, nurses, firefighters, because they know that I am that voice to fight for their everyday basic needs, and not just their basic needs, but how do we create a stronger middle class and access to that middle class. And so I do have that experience, not just in City Hall as an intern and then turned staffer, turned chief of staff, turned council member, but as the mayor, I will be putting those values into action and being that the mayor that is actually in the community, doing the hard work, rolling up my sleeves to do that work in partnership with you all. I am also very pleased to be endorsed by Attorney General Rob Bonta, State Treasurer Fiona Ma, State Assembly Speaker Anthony Rendon, and many other elected officials up and down the state of California. And I say this to say that is so incredibly important as we are fighting for limited resources. And I want to make sure that I work with all of those elected officials at the state to ensure that Oakland gets the resources it needs. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Now I'm going to pass the mic to our final candidate, Seneca Scots. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Let me start my timer. Y'all don't have a timer. I got my own, it's okay. All right, good evening. Thank you for the invitation. I love when I look at that poster. That poster is giving me joy all week because it represents a lot of hope and change, to quote my man Obama and my man Barbara Hodge's hope-driven campaign, right? So let's get into this. I'm happy to go last because one word I haven't heard yet, which to me is the most important word in this election, no one said it yet, accountability. So I'm running on accountability. I'm running on accessibility. I'm running on someone who's boots on the ground, who can go into any neighborhood, who has gone into any and every neighborhood in Oakland, who can talk to any and every neighbor in Oakland, from the elite people in the hills to the young children who are killing each other in our streets currently. And I don't know of other candidates who can do that, but I can say strongly that I'm a person who can do that and have done that in my time in Oakland. So my first thing I'm gonna do if I'm elected and I'm blessed is to immediately go for a charter amendment to expand the accessibility and accountability of Oakland's mayor. As many of you may know, we have a hybrid model. The frustration you get when you're in the city and you get to run around and there's no accountability is partially due, I say partially because our leadership is problematic, but partially due to the structure of our city. And the mayor needs more power, more expansive power, potentially line item veto power over the budget to be able to affect change. Next are our biggest issues, which will require a lot of pragmacy, being the home encampments. I hear about the encampments, but I also haven't heard open air drug markets yet. Like, we got to be really, really honest with ourselves about the problems we're facing if we're going to be prepared to overcome the problems that are coming. So my timer just went off, so I'm gonna wrap it up. But thank you for the opportunity, and I hope to get into more depth about my plan soon.
Well, I have to say, I'm really excited about being here and having this discussion, because there's a lot of times that we as business owners, we as homeowners, we as occupants of the city, however we want to occupy the city, all have various conversations about the vision of Oakland. And I think that this is a good way to connect the people with the candidates who are looking to do things in the spirit of accountability, change, progress, and really get to know each and every one of you. Because what we all sometimes see is sometimes there's 15 people on the ballot. It's hard to create rapport with 15 people that are on the ballot. So this gives us an opportunity to have open dialogue. And I see that the chat is busy. I'm glad I see you guys. You guys are behaving. I appreciate that because I'm paying attention. So we are going to take off with this plane at 6:30 on the dot, and we are going to land at approximately 7 o'clock. And from there, we'll hopefully be able to open with a few questions from the chat and see how we can really bridge the gap around communications and make sure that people walk away feeling like that they are heard and that their voices are amplified. So is that fair? Okay, I see it. I see heads nodding. I see heads nodding. That's all good. Okay, great. So I really want to just dive right on into it if I possibly can. TOPA. For those who don't know what TOPA is the Tenant to Purchase Act. And I'm going to only ask this from select members that are on our panel, because if we all answer this question, we could be here all day. So I want to make sure that we break up the questions as much as possible, so you all have a fair voice in answering the questions that were before you. So what is your position on the Tenant to Purchase Act? If you're for implementing this ordinance, then why? So I'm going to start with the one person who has a real estate license. Lauren Taylor, please take it away.
Yes, thanks for that opportunity. I think it's important when we talk about TOPA to recognize that the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, I think everyone agrees our tenants need to have an opportunity to purchase, and the pathways and the resources and the support in doing that. Everyone should be able to attain that dream of home ownership. When it comes to TOPA as it has been implemented, I approach that as I do every other policy that exists within the city that I'm required to decide on. And that's rolling up sleeves, getting into details and understanding the nuances that will impact on the ground in a positive or a negative way. In its current form, as has been proposed, I'm not supportive of TOPA. I rolled up sleeves, went to DC and actually met with the housing department in DC where TOPA has existed and it's been modeled, and asked them the tough questions about, well, how is it working? Where is the benefit? Where is it being realized? The reality is that when they implemented TOPA, they have not been tracking the success and the outcomes associated with that. Also, TOPA was more successful. I would say it was demonstrated some utility for those properties that were more than 20 units. TOPA, as we have been discussing it here in the Bay Area, has been focused on the single family residences and those that are up to 4 units. The reality is that those were excluded from TOPA after it was revisited in DC because of the negative impact it was having on the Black community, on wealth transfer, intergenerational wealth transfer and creation. So it's important that we look at the broader, I will say, context. I think there are some things that we can absolutely do to address the pathways to homeownership for our tenants, and that's what we should be focused on, is working on ways that other ways that we can increase that pathway to homeownership. The homeowner assistance programs, actually fully funding that in a way that it hasn't been to date, helping to support the not just the down payments, but other innovative ways to access homeownership, cooperative ownership, and reducing a lot of the red tape that has existed within the city government.
Thank you. So, Elisa, I'd like for you to tackle that question as well.
Thank you. So overall, I support the general spirit and essence of giving a right of first refusal for units before they're taken out of the market completely. TOPA stands for Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act and looks different in different places. We need one that is tailored to our city, to the needs, and that will have the actual intended consequences and not the unintended ones. I've been following the legislation as it moves through Berkeley. It was introduced by Berkeley's mayor for their city council to review. It went through several amendments that excluded things like owner-occupied units, single-family homes, and units that had less than 5 separate units in it when there was a medical emergency. So they've gone through a lot of amendments and discussion, and it's now on hold in Berkeley. We can also look to our neighbor in San Francisco, which did adopt COPA, which is a Community Opportunity to Purchase Act, which is only available to community organizations, not to any tenant or tenant group. So again, we have different models that we are seeing being proposed that have been adopted in our neighboring cities. I support the spirit of a Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, but I do believe we need to make sure that we are amending and tailoring it to meet the specific needs of our community. And while we're trying to regulate what private real estate is going to do and what private ownership is going to do, we also need to make sure that we pass a strong public lands policy about what happens when there is vacant lands or lands that we've now not sure what to do to ensure that that is prioritized for affordable housing, or the same opportunities to purchase are given to public space as well.
And I'd love to hear your take on this, Seneca, as well.
Hello, yeah, no on TOPA. That's a negative. It's gonna hurt Black. You talk to Black elders. Imagine already losing your generational wealth, holding on to your last house. Your white tenants haven't paid you rent for 2 years. And now when you have to sell it, you have to sell it to them. Anything that creates these scenarios should even be vetted. Why are we even like, who's behind TOPA? Like, this is the type of performative altruism Black people need to watch. Are y'all watching Atlanta right now? You see how they're portraying these dangerous, like white liberals? Like, check this stuff. Right? Like, I don't understand how this benefits Black people at all. I'm gonna cut it short. Like, no on TOPA. We all know we need more money. We all know we need more opportunity. That is not the way to get it. But thank you.
And my last candidate, I would like Greg. Could you chime in on TOPA as well?
Sure. Like everybody on this call, I think, other than maybe with Seneca as an exception, I support the spirit of TOPA, but I do think that the way that we approach all of this has to look at the detail of like what impact will have on that single, family homeowner who is African-American. I think if we put all of this in context, we need to remember that the legacy of FHA and VA mortgage lending left us behind. Between the 1930s and 1960s, $120 billion of mortgage lending went into the US housing market, with only 2% going to people of color. I think that as we look at the disparity in the net worth in our community, this is another result of that. I think that part of what we need to do is think about housing as a regional issue. We know about the displacement in East Palo Alto, San Francisco, Berkeley, et cetera. So the current proposals that I support that could be in tandem with TOPA or some hybrid version of that comes out of the Black Housing Advisory Task Force. They recently sent a letter to Nancy Skinner and some of our other state delegation to create a $500 million fund. $325 million would go to supporting those first-time home buyers with down payment assistance, with housing preservation and development, which I think could go to the issue that Seneca raised in terms of how does this hurt or help that Black homeowner, as well as investing in cultural districts and anchor institutions. So I think, like most ideas, taken alone, it's problematic in some ways. I can support the idea of right of first right of first offer and refusal if there are also resources to make that opportunity real. So I think that those first-time homeowner programs, bolstered by something like what Black Hat has, Black Home Advisory Task Force, Housing Advisory Task Force would be helpful as we think about how to implement that in Oakland.
Thank you. And I also want, if we can, Shane, can you give us your feedback on TOPA as well?
Yeah, I'm agreeable with the majority of what this group is. There has been no language that has been drafted here in the city of Oakland. As Ms. Victory said earlier, Berkeley has put a hold onto their version of it. We would need to have someone draft that version and really roll up our sleeves to take a look at TOPA to see what the language actually says and what it includes and what it doesn't include. For me, I'm a big champion of making sure that working families have access to home ownership. Again, as one of only 2 renters on the city council, looking forward to the day that I can afford to buy a home myself. And so this is something that I would be working with community in partnership and making sure that we are creating the access point for those who are looking to be homeowners, to have that ability to be homeowners. And so the spirit behind making sure that you have the first right of refusal, absolutely. And making sure that you have equity when you are selling that home is also incredibly important to me as well too. Thank you.
So now that we've talked about TOPA a little bit, I really want to kind of dive into housing related funds, because we as the members of ARPB have sat with probably all or most of the city council at this point. And our whole focus is, again, bridging the gap, the wealth gap and homeownership, not only in the city, but in general. So my next question will be, we were told that there's approximately $600,000 in funds and housing funds left over and housing related funds. How do you best see these funds used to assist buyers? Who wants to take that? Go ahead, Shane.
Oh, thank you so much. Absolutely. First of all, I want to address that the hearing about the $600,000 in funds and housing left over. I think that that's incredibly not a good use of funds. And so for me, I was actually the only council member when we were going through a budget process that said that one of my priorities of funding was for the MAP program. We have here in the city of Oakland, the mortgage assistance program. And I wanted to make sure that we put more money into that so that we can get more Oaklanders into home ownership. However, it did not have enough votes for it to land on its feet. And so for me, I say, why stop there? As your next mayor of the city of Oakland, I want to make sure that we invest those dollars into the MAP program, and not just that, but expand it so that we can be very intentional about who can purchase homes here in the city of Oakland. And that who is Oaklanders, Black and brown and low income Oaklanders like yourself and myself. And because we know that through homeownership, this is the beginning works of intergenerational wealth. And not just that, but access to the middle class and a better opportunity, not just for your family, but for your future generations as well. And so these are some of the things that we can use that funds for. Also, the funds can also be utilized for all of these transactional fees. I know that there was another issue in regards to the sidewalk ordinance and also the sewer lateral ordinance as well too. I actually was a council member along with then now retired Vice Mayor Larry Reed, who put a moratorium on the sidewalk ordinance, because I knew, and I argued on the dais, that for me as a first-time home buyer, or for any other first-time home buyer, adding on what people would consider just $5,000 more could make it or break it for the deal when you are buying a home. You know, people are putting together a lot of money, borrowing and begging and pleading from families or banks or whatever have you. And so it could make it or break it for that deal. And so I want to make sure that we are working in partnership to ensure that we do create true access for those families and be intentional about those families who can get true access into this generational wealth building and home ownership. Thank you.
Treva, would you take pass the mic to you, I should say. Same question.
Thank you. I saw Lauren's hand up. I was going to put mine up next. I didn't want to overstep his hand. To my knowledge, we do not have the housing assistance funds for buyers as it was indicated. And that's unfortunate. While $600,000 I know can be a significant amount of money, if it were available, that would support less than 10 buyers, you know, through the MAP program. And that has benefited Black and Brown home buyers and first-time home buyers, especially. But we know that we need more funding to assist our low and moderate income buyer program. I thank you for the work that you all have led on just the initiatives with the Town Connect program, our mortgage assistance program, collaborating with our Keep Oakland House department on educating and moving tenants from renters like myself into home ownership, and just a number of recommendations like reducing the city's transfer tax for first-time buyers. I think we need to continue to advocate for state and federal program investment, increased down payment assistance. I bought my first home out of state. I've not been able yet to own a home here in back in Oakland. I'm a renter here, but I bought my first home through an affordable home ownership program that had tax abatement incentives for 10 years, that had no PMI insurance. And so working to get more of our banks on board through our federal partners to ensure that we have those type of programs available and subsidies that support coming into home ownership programs is going to be significant. Allowing renters to bank rent payments through home purchasing programs will also be a significant opportunity to help see that generational wealth opportunity come into our communities. We know that the majority of those who are renters in Oakland are Black, and those who have had the least access and opportunity to sustain themselves with the generational wealth empowering opportunities through home ownership have been Black. And so I think that the work that you're leading, the work that we need to continue to provide early home ownership classes for exposure at all ages, partnering with OUSD to get into our high schools with high school students and having those conversations, addressing some of the myths and the fears related to home ownership, addressing the delayed gratification that certainly is needed as you come into home ownership. I think those type of educational programs are impactful as we look to model programs and invest in our Oakland Housing Fund Trust as well, to have more opportunities for our renters to come into home ownership and to have more funding and subsidies that support those who are in the market to buy.
Lauren, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I did want to jump in. I think we have to acknowledge some of the realities that exist. When I got my first home, I was fortunate to have parents who lived here, grandparents who lived here. So I was able to stay with them for a couple, 3 years and be able to save up. That is not available to many folks that are looking to purchase a home right now. Also, I think we have to look at the realities that from 2000 to today, so in 20 years, the average personal income rose by 7%, whereas the cost of housing rose by 277%. when we talk about that significant gap between people's income growth and the housing growth, it's going to take a significant, I will say, support, investment, and resources in order to support our residents getting homes that they can live in and sustain. One of the things that I think we should be looking at is writing down the cost of the home, the city actually doing that in terms of a portion of the land, a portion of that write down that would come back after whoever the resident is sells their home, or once they're able to pay it off. And in that way, we can suppress and make the home ownership affordable and accessible there. The dollars would come back to the city, so it wouldn't be a full grant, but it would be a sort of a low to no interest loan. I think it's important that we also, when we look at this access to home ownership, we have to bring the mentality of those who have gone through the process of securing homes, helping others secure homes, and in that lens in developing the policy. I think it's absolutely critical that you have that that knowledge, understanding, and experience when you're actually rolling up sleeves and coming up with a policy that will work and not something that just gets headlines.
Okay, so we got 10 minutes and I'm being told I got to land the plane. So I'm going to ask this question to Seneca, Greg, Lisa. What are some of the solutions you have in mind for eradicating or minimizing homelessness in Oakland? I'm sure that's a loaded gun, but it's a viable question.
Yes. So as many of you know, I'm running and I've sued the city of Oakland through my nonprofit Neighbors Together Oakland for not following their homeless encampment policy. And if you recall, this policy was a hollow performative act during the height of an election to basically help certain people win. And it wasn't well thought out in many regards, but it did say something significant, that we need to balance the needs and interests of all Oaklanders in terms of these encampment crises. And right now that's not happening. We're out of balance. We're at the point where we actually have such favorable conditions for the unhoused that we have drug tourism that's rampant. And the new face of homelessness is no longer the old face. The old face was 80% of Oakland's homeless were Black, and they went homeless in the neighborhoods they grew up in. Now, when you've added thousands more homeless, those thousands of people aren't Black, they're white males, right? Like I don't hear anybody being honest about this. It's really dangerous. It's causing a lot of our businesses to suffer. I speak to businesses every single day, second, third, fourth generation Latino businesses in Fruitvale who are thinking about packing it up because of the conditions in their neighborhood. So first, we need to triage and stop the bleeding. We need to actually enforce rule of law so that we don't actually have drug tourism and more people coming into Oakland. But essential to all of this is housing, right? Now, I hear a lot of housing first, so I want to talk about that for a second. Housing first and housing alone is the solution to our encampment crisis, like food alone is the solution to someone with an eating disorder. It's extremely disrespectful to remove the amount of nuance from what led to the situation and expect to come up with any viable solution. Oakland does not have enough money right now to provide wraparound services and housing to address the drug and mental health crisis. What that means is we're going to have to go to the county. Oakland has over 70% of the county's homeless. We don't get anywhere near that amount of resources from the county. Why are we not fighting for that? At minimum, that we get the at least equal share of resources from our county that we do that from our homeless population. Also, we need resources from the state, right? We also need to follow through when we say we're going to do something. Atoll tennis courts is a perfect example. We scheduled eviction. First of all, we found housing. Everyone left except Nino Parker, who's a known homeless advocate. Then he didn't leave, so they couldn't clean up the parks because they kept delaying it for one person. That's the place for kids to play at. Like, that's a waste of our resources and time. And when I went out there to see those advocates, they were all white as usual. And I'm gonna keep on this theme because Oakland's mostly white now. And this is a Black forum, so I'm gonna, take my safety zone and my safe space to talk about white people, but like they're a problem right now. And like, we need to be honest about that, and we need to safeguard ourselves against these people who act like they have good intentions, but they don't. So if we want to help our brothers and sisters who are unhoused, We need to actually not allow them to exist in the misery that they live in right now. That's not compassionate. That's actually contemptuous. And we absolutely deserve better. So we need urgent resources from the county and state. We need to think outside the box in terms of how we and where we house these people and include non-traditional housing like the RV and all the expansion of that. I'm gonna wrap it up. I know you're looking at me, but so yes, we need to take this seriously, but we also need to think about our businesses and our homeowners and our parks and our children. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think I was next on your list, Sister Badger. So I would say a couple things. Number one, I think that whatever solutions they're going to emerge from two sources. They're going to emerge from the point of view of the people that are most impacted. The people like, when I meet brothers like Rendell lives on the space between Castro Street and the freeway, just across from the gas station where Ursi Jordan got shot. You know, when I talk to Rendell, you know, he's been displaced for a long time. He probably has some mental health issues, but Rendell's situation is like a lot of people's. They're not a situation of their own making. So I think that we got to listen to what people are saying who live in the encampments, people who like Candace Elder and others at East Oakland Collective who are working directly with folks. And then second, I think we need to pay attention to the data. As you all know, the point in time count for 2022 just completed. I don't think we've seen the results of it yet. But if we were to sort of speculate a little bit about what we saw in 2019, that as Seneca rightly points out, 4,000 or so of those folks countywide include 3,200 people in Oakland, 70% of which are African American. So that's our community. When they were asked, when the people who were most affected were asked, 67% of those folks said it was financial issues. 35% of that was rental assistance related. Another 32% was benefits and income. 41% of the folks who were asked at that time, 3 years ago, it was mental health issues. So about 22% that were either diagnosed or undiagnosed mental health issues, and about 19% said that they had had alcohol and drug counseling, they may have avoided homelessness. So I think that the solutions lie in these three places. It lies in a updated and improved encampment management policy from the city side and where the resources are there. Number two, it requires a city-county partnership. I agree with what Seneca just said about we don't get our fair share of resources from the county. I've been part of the African American Response Circle for the last 2 years with COVID. We've advanced a $100 million plan to the county around rental assistance, around first-time home buyers, around Black business startups, around food security, and essentially it fell on deaf ears. And this is resources, $360 million coming from the feds that were split in two tranches. The first tranche hasn't even been spent, while the county sits on a $2 billion with a B reserve. And so for many of us, when we look at people who are going hungry, folks who need housing, folks who need mental health services, those resources sit at the county. Third, it is that regional approach that I mentioned earlier, looking at how homelessness and the unhoused issues manifest in the region as people move from Oakland to Antioch or move from San Francisco over to Oakland. We have to figure out where are the partnerships across the region with ABAG, with whoever those entities are that we should be working with as a city. And so for me, I think that there are no easy solutions to it based on the market. The affordability issue is just through the roof. As you all know, we have people who will go to work every day from encampments. So I think that part of this situation for all Oaklanders is we need to put a face on the issue. We need to understand what folks are really saying. And when that new count comes out, really tailor our responses, our solutions to what the data tells us and what the people who are the most impacted tell us need to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think homelessness and unhoused, it's so visceral around our city that it's at the top of everyone's minds. And having been homeless, my first line of defense to address our unhoused population and our crisis is to lead with housing first policy with a human rights lens, not to perpetuate poverty as a policy choice, to keep people managed and maintained in substandard conditions that were not meant for human beings. A lot of our city-sponsored encampments vary in the materials, the spacing, and the resources that are available. Housing first is, again, not a specific written policy, but it differs in every jurisdiction. But it is the understanding that if people do not have housing first, all other interventions like rehabilitation, like mental health services will be less effective. So housing is the solution to our homeless crisis. But we've declared homelessness a local emergency ever since 2018. They gave us emergency powers to do some of the things we've been able to do with emergency funds during pandemic. We've been able to push forward this encampment management policy, but that's doing just that. It's managing encampments, and it's effectively redlining communities and where they can be homeless and where they can struggle to survive in this city. And this is not just an Oakland policy. Other cities like LA have followed our suit, and we followed in other people's and other cities' walks who've done these same things. There's some chats, some information being dropped in the chats about some of these practices and the legality around them, because homeless people are still people. They still have constitutional rights, and the city cannot simply just disappear them away or ask them to leave, especially when these are our residents, our workers, many of them lifelong Oaklanders. I want to lead with housing first policy, but I also said I want to expand our affordable housing options, social housing, workforce housing. I want to create a public banking system, which I advised our city on back in 2015 to help finance these mechanisms, because right now we're dependent a lot on philanthropy and private corporations to build and to fund the building. We've exceeded our luxury building and barely met 50% of our affordable housing goals. Those are choices that we continue to make in our city, and that will end when I am mayor. So I, again, look forward to more of your discussion questions in the chats, and I'll be putting my contact information. You can visit victoryforoakland.com to see more specifics about my housing platform.
Well, look at that. I've landed the plane at 7 o'clock sharp. So now we're going to open it up for, thank you. Now we're going to open up for Q&A. Thank you all for contributing to those questions. We're going to open up the chat. I think the chat has actually already kind of been open. So we're going to take a few questions out of the chat and let the people in the chat have a voice in this. So my first question from the chat is going to be for Lauren, Shane, and Treva. The question is, what housing project or developments have you championed since you've been in office?
Who's up first? Want me to jump in?
Sure.
Gladly. Okay. So as far as housing projects, and I'll just jump straight to it. We in District 6 have had a dearth of development prior to my coming in, and I'm grateful to have been able to champion some, I will say, transformative affordable housing initiatives. So when we look at long blighted, underutilized properties, I think the first one that I'll point to is Liberation Park. So a city-owned lot at the corner of 73rd and Foothill next to Eastmont Mall. This is a city-owned lot where we were able to partner with the Black Cultural Zone Collaborative and other partners to, first of all, grant immediate access through a hyper low cost rent that then work with them to activate it for community, as a community resource, as a urban oasis, and a local marketplace for small businesses and a farmer's market. We also worked with the Black Cultural Zone and their development partners to secure an exclusive negotiating agreement for housing development, affordable housing development that will take place on that site. And so they now have the ENA, they are working through that, and we expect, I believe it's over 125 units of housing to be produced there, affordable housing that will address this need. We also have worked with the Oakland Unified School District partners for the Edward Shands building in my district that has been an unused facility for a long time. And there is a development team that is actively working, Eagle Construction is actively working in order to build that out for affordable housing and community workspace as well. Other things that I'm happy and glad to have championed is funding a pre-development loan fund up to $1 million so that those longtime property owners in Oakland who have not been able to develop or build their housing, that there's a fund that they could tap into in order to do that. And that was through the redevelopment funds that we have in the city. In addition, I'm grateful to have been able to partner on policies that enhance the total allowance for the home maintenance improvement program in the city for our existing homeowners who are struggling to improve their homes and living in conditions that are unbearable. So those are some examples of the projects that I've been able to champion. And I will just add that when we have had projects that have come forward, I have been very focused on supporting them. Like more recently, the Lakeside Commons project with a Black developer that had a union labor agreement, project labor agreement already established. Unfortunately, the majority of the council chose not to extend that ENA and allow this development project that was bringing significant more than 100 units of affordable housing forward. And that was one that I voted for. And unfortunately, we need to have folks in place in the council and in the mayor's office who are willing to support these good projects that are bringing the affordable housing.
Treva or Shane, which one, who would like to take the mic from here?
I can go. There's certainly been a number of projects since I've come into office that I've been able to support in legislation that have moved forward. We started off the year with securing funding through my role that we seeded from the Oakland Coliseum Joint Powers Authority to allow the city to establish some housing solutions with hotel residency where we were reimbursed through FEMA for providing housing to our homeless community members. Some of those efforts are being advanced now with the county, who is establishing a long-term family housing solution in some of those areas. We recently also in that same area supported additional funding for La Clinica Community Health Center in developing out a hotel for just those who are in housing transition. It's a transformational just community development that allow those primarily who've been coming into our community who have been formerly incarcerated to have housing stability, to have workforce development opportunity, to have financial literacy, credit repair support, social service, wraparound services to help them engage in what's going to be needed for them to thrive upon their return. I've supported participating in the groundbreaking of developing affordable housing that had been led by Axe Community Development Corporation. It includes 55 units of deeply affordable housing. It's a mixed housing development there. It has a health center supported by La Clinica on the bottom and housing on the top. It's a health and housing model that I believe that we need to establish more through our efforts through the Better Neighborhoods, Same Neighborhoods Together initiative, which is a $28 million statewide initiative that I've certainly been supportive of and working at the table with community that puts billions of cap and trade dollars to work back into our community. I mentioned that was La Clinica. I meant that initially that was Lau Family. I don't know if I said Lau Family or La Clinica earlier, but La Clinica is the health center in partnership with that development at 95th and International. We worked to secure additional funding since I've been in office that I've supported for the development of tiny home villages, increasing the capacity with alternative housing options like investments into our accessory dwelling units, modular home policies that I've supported that can benefit us in East Oakland. There's a particular site that we are waiting on state funding that I've supported the proposal of senior housing in close proximity at Clare and Eads to our East Oakland Senior Center. This housing solution would be supportive for seniors. As I came into office, we were able to launch a development at 105th and International that was in the pipeline, but I was able to help, support seniors coming into housing there with 300 units that were available. We've worked to stand up certainly some temporary housing solutions that we know are not long-term, like safe RV parking for those who are dwelling in RVs at locations in District 7. I have supported just funding that's come recently through the state that's going to bring a funding ability for over 500 affordable home units to be built through a $215 million funding grant through the state that's going to help address some of the housing crisis that we are facing. Councilmember Taylor mentioned that Lakeside Commons project. I served on the board with SAHA, Satellite Affordable Housing, when that project initially came before City Council. And at that time, as a board member, we were advocating for, I believe, 132 units to be 100% affordable housing there. That project was not progressed, and the developer, Mr. Johnson's project was with Ibalti, and I fully supported that project when it came before council, advocating for a Black developer to have an opportunity where we as a city have lacked investing in Black-owned and women-owned businesses as we face a disparity rate of our own with less than 2% contracting. That's absolutely shameful. And so I supported the Black developer project that would have brought about 108 units of affordable housing into that mixed housing development. And it would have also provided millions of funds into our impact fund that could support additional affordable housing. And so as those projects come before us, I look through the lens of certainly equity and driving towards ensuring that we prioritize, protect, and preserve housing, especially for those who've been greatly impacted. As it's been stated, our Black community facing homelessness at 70% and our Black men, 80% of that data.
Thank you. Do I start now?
Yes, please do.
Awesome. I really appreciate the question. This is one of the highest priorities of all Oaklanders right now. We are faced with the housing crisis and affordability crisis here in the city of Oakland. And so the question becomes, how do we tackle this huge issue? And for me, I have the experience and have been, again, worked at City Hall as a staffer previously, before that an intern, and now a council member. And as mayor, I'm already working on many of the policies that I would implement as mayor. And one of those policies is that I've already gone out, found funding for a feasibility study for an EIFD, a citywide EFD, which is an enhanced infrastructure financing district, which is not a new tax. It's not a new tax, but basically what it is that we would take those funds and then we would pay it back by the increments in which we invest in those areas. So for instance, if we invested in a business district, and that business district without those investments wouldn't otherwise bring in these new tax revenues, we would use those new tax revenue increments to pay off that debt. And this is regional. This is how we afford to actually pay for affordable housing, for teacher housing, for deeply affordable housing, and moderate housing. We saw our RENA numbers. Let's get real with it, right? Our RENA number says that market rate housing is shooting through the roof, and we have done no work in regards to building out affordable, deeply affordable, and moderate housing at all. And so the question becomes, what kind of Oakland do you want to build, and who do you want to build it for? And so a part of my platform, my number one focus actually is really focusing on this housing issue and making sure that we are building an Oakland that can house Oaklanders, building an Oakland where Oaklanders can actually live here, play here, and work here. And so a part of that too is that in my district, I was able to work with a private property owner. I do cold calling. I call private property owners who have property that needs to be built on. And so at High Street and MacArthur, I have finally, the property owner there is going to build 190 units of affordable workforce housing there. That is something that I'm very proud of to be working in partnership with the owner on. At Still Street, we have affordable housing for a domestic violence survivor. This is a personal task for me, a personal thing for me, because I am a survivor myself. And then more than that, we're able to build out affordable teacher housing in District 4 as well too. I do believe that I come with a concept of making sure that we have a multi-use housing, so that no matter what your income is, you're able to afford to live anywhere in the city, and that not only those who have funds will live above 580, but if you want to live above 580, you have an opportunity to do so. And I'm also very excited for championing the $1 million for Lau family that do actually get people off the streets. And if you're able-bodied, they will get you a job the next day, come with wraparound services on them, not on this. The city doesn't have to pay for that. All we have to pay for is the housing portion, which is they get them into hotel rooms. And then not just that, but they will also work with different housing partners to ensure that they are housed permanently, and not just that, but follow them for the next 6 months to make sure that they're paying the bills on time and not and also going to work and what have you. Also, I have worked with a council member Cobb on innovation policies, which allows to for homeowners to actually expand easily ADUs in their backyards, and not just that, but allow for space if they wanted to rent out space for RVs in their backyard, so that RVs can be parked there. And also, along with those lines, we have to ensure that people can afford to actually live in these homes, right? Even if they're affordable. So how do we do that? We actually need to create job opportunities. And so for me, we know that at the city, there are between 20 to 35% vacancies throughout all the departments in the city of Oakland. And why wouldn't we want Oaklanders to get into these high-paying union jobs so that we can make sure that the money gets back into Oaklanders' pockets, and so that they can be part of the economy that that will be invested into a thriving city. And so creating pipelines with paid internships for our youth, from sophomore, juniors, and seniors in high school to the city of Oakland. And once they graduate, if they don't go to college and if they want to go directly to the workforce, that they'll be able to actually be expedited into these positions because they have already had the experience. And not just that, but creating more pipelines and resources for all of those young folks, 30 years and older, to make sure that we do have money, we do give money and put money back into those pockets. And that is how we also keep ourselves safe. I see this as a thriving environment where everything is connected. If you don't have housing, if you don't have good jobs, then you're not going to have good public safety services. And so that is one way in how we keep ourselves safe, is making sure people are housed, making sure that people have the funds that they need in their pockets so they can pay for their basic needs. Making sure that we have a thriving community means that we all have to roll up our sleeves and put in the work. And I am there for it, and I'm there to be in partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I heard a lot of words around developers, development thrown around, but I really would love to hear more about hiring mandates. If you don't have hiring mandates for people that look like us to go and contract those roles in those development sites, luxury homes, affordable homes, any type of development in the city, you are creating more of a disparity for the people that need to keep up with the cost of living in the city. So if there's no hiring mandates in the city, it would seem like that would be a feasible fix here. But don't get me started on that. I digress. I'm going to
If I could just jump in, I do want to just emphasize that we do have a disparity study that was published 2 years ago, just with respect to that, the contractor hiring and the pipeline of jobs and local jobs, local hiring, as well as local contractors. And there has been work that I have been leading. Thank you, Councilmember Reed, for joining in partnership in driving that forward so that we can roll up sleeves and actually influence the hiring and the number of Black folks that we do see on these construction and work sites due to the contractors and the hiring policies and having the appropriate contractor compliance functions to make that happen.
So I want to, again, we're going to go and open it up for something that is a pressing issue that everybody wants to hear about: the violence in the city of Oakland. We all know that there are ghost guns floating around Oakland. We have seen the increase in violence, gun-related, non-gun-related, in the city of Oakland. Seneca, I'm going to give you the floor on what your platform is to deal with violence.
So one of the first things we need to do is immediately up the number of police we have. We currently are at 676 at my last report, but that could have changed from last week when I spoke to Barry Donaldson at the police union guy who wrote that op-ed asking for people to stop demonizing Chief Armstrong a couple of weeks ago. So that's one part, but look, guys, it's gonna get worse. We're like Brazil. Y'all remember City of God with those child soldiers? That's Oakland in our cities now. We had a 5-year-old or 6-year-old carjack someone with the youngest violent offender in Oakland's history last year. Shame on us for allowing that and for losing these children. So to get them back when they have access to putting up guns like Legos now, and the whole landscape has changed. You saw that in Sacramento. For those of you who don't know, that's a Glock switch. Those kids 3D print those up. They put them in the guns they 3D print, and they go out and they can shoot 20 rounds a second. And I say that because I'm a strong two-way advocate, and even I understand the need to not have these type of weapons on the street and have our children having access to such dangerous tools that they don't need to be having. So we need direct community policing and intervention for these children. And you need to do it the same way that you do it for child soldiers. The same way you have child soldiers in Africa and other places in war zones, you have to take that same approach. That violence and those numbers of people you see killed, and you subtract the number of people caught for it, means you walk by murderers in the street every day. You walk by children in the street every day who take lives, then go and brag about it on their IG lives and make music videos about it that get millions of views on YouTube, and then YouTube pays them and they repeat the cycle. So first you need to know what's going on by actually being in the communities and talking to these children who are doing the violence, who are glorifying the violence, and give them something to live for. So in addition to a lot of things, I want to talk about the Department of Agriculture I plan on creating. And I'm working with the Alameda County right now on tax abated properties to make sure that we can grow food and plant medicine. We have legalization of cannabis and psychedelics. That's the perfect segue to meet these young children halfway about business opportunities that come in something that they're already glorifying. It's daring and it's out there, but we're gonna have to do something unique if you're gonna grasp the attention of our children. And I wanna add one more thing. It's going to be a hot summer. You got 20% price increases coming in our food. Our energy prices are escalating. The home invasions are like picking up big time. People are terrified right now in my community for their personal safety. Had a neighbor shot in the face holding his baby not too long ago. They moved. They were Black, him and his partner, right? And it's just shameful. So we need to be honest with ourselves. We need to demand accountability. And most importantly, like, let's stop this division between moderates and progressive, right? I know people like want to walk away from defund, but defund is still on the ATPT website. Like, let's stop playing games. We're not defunding nobody, right? We need more police. We need to implement macro. What's up with macro? We've been on macro 2 years. We're gonna implement it? Like, what we waiting for? You know what they waiting for. They know the moment they implement macro, something gonna happen, and they're gonna beg for have a police intervention, which kills the whole program in the first place, because the whole thing was to replace armed police. But if you don't know when and where to replace armed police, because so many like mentally ill people can turn violent at the blink of an eye, it's only going to be a week or two before something happens. So macro is performative. It's completely performative. All the council people who are on here right now, stop wasting our time. This election is not happening for another year. You're in this job for another year. People are going to die if you don't do your jobs, and you're going to lose anyway if you don't do your job. Right? There's no way you're going to win if Oakland keeps deteriorating. So my advice to you while you have these positions of power is tap in with your communities in a meaningful way. Be honest about these problems. Stop this performative altruism masquerading as progressiveness, and have a public debate about real solutions about these issues. Thank you.
Yeah, can I weigh in on this one?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like one of the issues, if not the issue, that most people who live in Oakland are most concerned about. I think that part of what we have to do as a city is get out of our normal siloed kind of conversations around, sort of the dogma. In some ways, Seneca spoke to it, of like, it's either all about police or it's all about social services, and it's not. It's about all of those things. We have to craft a comprehensive approach that's going to really shore up our mental health, our social, our educational system, our K-12. As a former school board member, our K-12 system is very important in this conversation. And we've got to figure out how we deploy the law enforcement that we do have in a very surgical, effective way. right? The problem I have generally with this conversation when people start talking about public safety, they immediately start talking about policing. None of the data, none of the literature, nothing has ever said the more police you have, the safer you are. It is part of the solution. It is not in any city across the country. You go to Philly, Chicago, New York, when New York bulked up the police department, it didn't make people necessarily feel safer. So a comprehensive approach, I think we need to fully implement. This is where I disagree with Seneca. I think we do need to implement macro, the idea of what the Department of Violence Prevention is doing with violence interrupters, what they're doing with the department with domestic violence interventions. All of those things are going to make a difference. We need to make sure we have full funding for the Department of Violence Prevention. That the original concept was that it would be funded at a level commensurate to Oakland Police Department. I think we need to prioritize how law enforcement is used in terms of ensuring the focus on the most serious crimes. Like many of us, I had a friend who was killed last year, a home invasion with Dirk Tillotson and his wife on a Friday night. I think part of what we don't have is we have to put a face on this issue. We have to make sure that people see those 138 people who got killed last year and the ones who've been killed this year as human beings, not as some statistic, not as some number. I think all of the issues we talked about earlier in terms of economic opportunity, in terms of homelessness and housing and the issues of blight, all contribute to the feeling or the lack thereof of feeling safe. Years ago, when I worked with the Code 33 project, where we had cops talking to kids, and this was when Rich Word was still the police chief. You know, we were working with folks. Matter of fact, Treva and I think we did some of this work over at Castlemont High School. Part of the relationship, the conversation in terms of public safety has to do with building relationships between young people in our community and adults in authority, whether they're cops, whether they're teachers, whether they're ministers, the community, us. We have a lot to say about this issue and a lot to do about it. The term I've heard more often than not in the last few weeks has been, Oakland feels like the wild, wild west. We have to change that perception. We have to change how we intervene. And if we don't do that, if we don't figure out how to take the brilliance on this call, the brilliance of everybody's ideas, and have a leader in the mayoral seat who can actually be a consensus builder, somebody that can bring the conversation together. I personally have spent 20 years helping people have conversations. And part of what we do in Oakland is we have a lot of great ideas, we debate those ideas, and then we don't arrive at a consensus, and then we don't implement. So I would hope that as people look for the next mayor, whether it's me, whether it's somebody else on this call, whether it's somebody else, that person has to have the experience, the skill set, and the temperament to bring all of these voices together, to figure out what the plan is going to be, and then move on it as a city. And I hope and really pray that we can do that, because I have a granddaughter. This is the last thing I'll say, and I'll yield the mic, Sister Badger. I became a grandfather this past year. And 20 years from now, when my granddaughter is 21 years old, I do not want to be having the same conversation with her. I do not want to be having her ask me, Granddad, what the hell were y'all doing when you had an opportunity to do something? I'd much rather have a conversation with her that goes like, Granddad, I want to thank you and your generation of leadership, the people who were running for mayor, on city council, and the board of supervisors, for making us safer, for being a cleaner city, for being a city that actually cares about the people who live here. And with that, I'll yield the floor, Sister.
Thank you. So I see hands up. I can't deal with everybody's hands because I told you I got to land a plane at 7:30, right? I got a different plane I got to land at
4 minutes.
We've got 4 minutes. So I'm going to allow Alyssa to have the final word, and then we're going to do closing remarks.
Thank you. This is such an important topic to me, as public safety is one of my top 3 issues. Public safety is really about us, the public, right? If we are not housed, if we're not employed, if we're not healthy, if we're not taken care of, then we're going to see crime rise. We're going to see people harming their neighbors, their family members. We're going to see domestic violence rise, even when things are strained, like during a pandemic. I'm the only candidate in this race who is a practicing civil rights attorney with expertise in police practices. I advise the city of Oakland, our police commission, our police department, as well as 48 out of 58 counties in the state of California. So I have some of the data, some of our best practices in other jurisdictions, and I've worked directly with our law enforcement, our previous chiefs of police. I've taught administration of justice classes, and I currently teach inside of San Quentin State Prison with some people who may never be released. And some of the things that they say that would have kept them out of those cages is having housing, is having access to education, and definitely equal employment opportunity. So we do have to have a more holistic system of public safety. Our council has already legislated several inroads into this. We have the highest number percentage-wise that we spend out of any city in the country on our police department. There's never going to be parity with other departments when our one sole police department has around 50%. It's like 44 at this moment of our general fund. So we have to have holistic investments, not necessarily defunding, certainly not increasing funding. We have to use the existing resources of 360 million plus that we spend on our officers, who are some of the highest paid personnel in our city. We have to ensure that there's accountability, because we're also under an 18-year-old settlement agreement for police misconduct, racial profiling, and abuse of force, right, from our police officers that we're asking to engage in constitutional and equal policing. I've sued police for misconduct. I've worked at agencies that served as monitors of settlements. I'm the only candidate that will get us out of some of these oversight mechanisms so that we can focus on delivering real public safety through our public safety department. I mentioned that council's already taken inroads. What's holding it up from being implemented? The mayor and city administration. Just one example that I'll give is special events permitting. Special events permitting is administrative duty that was already legislated to be taken out of our police department. 2 years later, it has not, because the mayor and city administrator have not made it a priority. So again, removing non-criminal activities from our police so that they can focus on actual crime, on emergencies, when people need immediate assistance and help, is something that we can do with common sense leadership who has the skills. Again, my name is Elisa Victory for Oakland.com to check out my full platform, and I'll hand it back to you, Ms. Badger.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask for some grace. Madam President, can I ask for grace?
Please, this discussion is
Okay.
to stop right now.
Okay. So I've been asked, I'm getting texts. Some of y'all know the bat phone line. So I'm getting texts. I'm getting DMs. I'm getting my whole phone is lighting up because they want to hear everybody's perspective on this. Now I'm going to give everybody somebody said give Beyonce a break. I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes to dive deep on this issue. So I'm going to open it, Lauren, Treva, and then Shane. You have the floor.
Thank you. Yes, public safety is absolutely I will say the pivotal issue, even though we're talking about housing. I hear from residents who unfortunately are preparing to move, longtime residents who say they've raised their kids here in this city, in this district, but they've had one too many bullets fly through their window and they can't take it anymore. So these are folks that are being displaced, not because of the cost, but because of the value to pay for and to exist here, but not get the safety, the public safety that they need. So I'm grateful to have been able to lead over the past 3 years and change efforts to reimagine public safety and ensure that we maintain a set of safety solutions for our residents. So as the co-chair for Reimagining Public Safety Task Force, I was able to bring together 140 Oaklanders every couple weeks over a 9-month period to come up with real recommendations on how we both improve safety and address the systemic issues with our public safety system, the racist past and the structural racism that does exist. In addition to the 35 recommendations that came out of that process, many of which are already being implemented, like the macro program, which I will disagree with Seneca, will have significant impact in reducing the calls for service that go to OPD. Also investing an unprecedented amount of dollars into the Department of Violence Prevention that exists and is really doing great work on the ground in terms of violence prevention. But also, I have lifted up the Stand Tall call to action in November. That calls for specific actions that I pasted into the chat, the link, and actions relate to 5 goals. One is we have to double the crime solve rate. We have to have greater effectiveness at solving crime so that folks don't feel as though they can come in here and be lawless and get away with anything. We also have to increase our response time increase the volume of responses, the speed of response for 911 calls for service. It doesn't make sense that some residents have to wait a day for someone to show up. We also have to double our investment in proven crime prevention and crime deterrence programs like Ceasefire, like the OK program, like restorative justice programs that are demonstrating results. But we also have to measure the success and not just throw good money out there for things that sound good but aren't effective. Fourth, we have to focus on addressing the disparities that exist between certain parts of our city. It makes no sense that we have twice as many calls outstanding in East Oakland as we do in West Oakland and Uptown. And lastly, we have to double our investment into mental health resources as a foundational element for addressing the crime and the other issues that exist within our society. Thank you.
Shane, you're up next.
Thank you. Thank you for this question. I believe that it's really critical to understand the trajectory of the public safety and the dynamics in public safety. We saw that before the city council took on the budget cycle, the December right before that, ceasefire and community officers were cut by the executive branch, and this was made through an executive decision by the administration, not the city council. And I'm proud to have been part of the 6 council members and the only mayoral candidate who did vote for a budget that invested in historical dollars in violence prevention, ceasefire, and gender-based violence, which we are seeing the results of those investments today. I worked directly with Chief Armstrong to put in parameters to save taxpayers' dollars, to increase our graduation success rates for our police academies, because previously, we were at 60% failure rate. And as a council member, I am a steward of your taxpayer dollars. I did not want to continue to throw money at a sinking ship. And so I took the month of recess off to go and work with the chief and really put in those parameters, which we are now seeing the fruit of those labor as well. We are seeing an increase in our success rates. But absolutely, Mr. Hodge is correct. We need a comprehensive approach. My home was broken into and burglarized while my son was home. And that just created trauma for him. And it's an ongoing trauma for him to this day. He does not want to stay home alone. And so we do have violent crimes. And so when we have these violent crimes, we do want to have that response from our officers. But investing in preventative measures and making sure that we are tying it in with access to jobs and access to housing is so incredibly important, because that is how we keep ourselves safe. Not just that, but meeting community where they are at. We need to know our neighbors. We need to build community. And so making sure that access to safe infrastructures like our parks and other rec centers or what have you is going to be key in how we keep ourselves safe as well too. We have 737 officers that we have funded for. And so I was able to work with the chief and Ed Riskin, and I was the council member who brought the 5th and the 6th Police Academy to passage. No matter what you heard in the newspapers, that's what happened. And so we also need to invest in K-12, right? Our schools are being divested from. This is not the time to be divesting from our kids. This is a time to actually invest more into our schools, more into our families that are most on the margin. And not just that, but community policing has been a key top topic in what I have always stated, even as a staffer, is community policing. What does that mean? That means making sure that officers are out meeting their community so that they are safe and community feels safe around them. And so the community do know who their beat officers are. And so I am proud to be the council member to fight for our walking police officers in business corridors, specifically during the holiday months, even though that I was met with a lot of hate around, not wanting to put that through, but I am grateful that we were able to get that voted on and passed on the city council as well too. And I am going to disagree with Senator Seneca, because I believe that macro is needed. Macro is something that we all agreed on the city council, which I am so proud of. We know that once it is very close to being stood up. Right now, it's going to, once it is stood up, it's going to be in District 6, District 7, and District 3. And we are going to be able to see the benefits of that investment as well. But it is going to, this is not a, one or the other. This is a both. We need all of these holistic approaches in order to make sure that we are keeping Oaklanders safe. And again, will we have a closing statement, Ms. Badger?
Well, we have one more person that we need to hear from, and then we're going to have a closing statement.
All right, well, I'll save my closing statement then. Thank you.
My turn.
It's your turn.
Wow. It's clear that we all deserve to be safe, regardless of where we live, our work, our show up in Oakland. That violent crime that we've been talking about, 134 lives were lost last year, and 71 of them were Black. And more than 50% of them were from East Oakland, where I live, where I show up every day, where I feel the weight of gun violence and the impact of all the disparities and inequities that are triggers for the crime and the shooting and the issues that we are talking about with public safety. It is a public health crisis. I uplifted that resolution that was supported. And to acknowledge what Greg Hodge shared is that it was a call from the community to place a demand, not just on the city, but the county to deliver more equity in how we show up with public safety resources for our community, ensuring that we invest more deeply in violence prevention, intervention, healing, trauma care, partnering with the county and the state to advance that resolution with community to disrupt these deeper systemic issues surrounding gun violence and crime, providing jobs, providing workforce readiness training program, providing housing, mental and behavioral health care, entrepreneurial program investment, life coaches, services that counter the issues that we're talking about. This issue for me is personal. It's not political. I lost my son, Brandon, in 2013 in the midst of working for Nancy Skinner, working to uplift and advance gun violence prevention packages and a particular bill called AB 48, her bullet bill. And we lost our son, one bullet, one life. And so when we talk about public safety, day one, I've shown up. Before getting to council, I was showing up to advocate and fight for our public safety priorities. And I continue to do that. We did that in the June budget. Long before some of the programs that you heard were supported and talked to with our chief of police, we were meeting with the chief, we were meeting with our Department of Violence Prevention chief day one. We were meeting with community members day one, holding public safety town forums day one, to understand how we could come together as a community and as a city and with county and state partners to deeply invest and show up with a love that respects and honors the value of lives, particularly Black lives and brown lives that have been impacted the most. And so yes, Oakland's macro program is coming forth. Councilmember Taylor and I met with him yesterday to welcome our responders who will be showing up on the streets of District 6 and District 7. It's needed and it's long overdue, just like a number of the things that we're talking about. I'm surprised coming into office that a number of these programs haven't been fully funded in advance. I will, as your mayor, continue to advance these reimagining public safety goals, investing deeply where I just mentioned, fully funding our ceasefire staffing and operations. That is a proven strategy. It brings together faith leaders, our neighborhood crime prevention councils, our HOA, our school, our youth-led organizations, our community health partners, impacting the community through specific strategies and solutions that we believe can work. We're launching an initiative on International between 80th and 96, where we have 6 liquor stores. We have 4 homeless encampments. We've lost over 10 lives in that block. We've got illegal dumping and blight and everything else. And we're going to come up with an intentional strategy to show up with and for our community. We need to recruit and retain more officers. While they're not the answer, we need qualified officers to fill these 100 vacancies that we're talking about, because we are below our Measure Z mandate. We are 670 plus officers. We need to fill those vacancies with police officers from our community who reflect our value and who will show up delivering trauma-informed community safety. We hear from Black women in this district, in East Oakland, who can't imagine that we would give them less and not more resources, when the data shows that it's Black women who call at the highest rates and are re-traumatized when no one shows up for them. And we're not showing up for our schools who have shootings taking place around them every day. And so there's a number of things that we need to do as we transform our police culture, as we hold them to increased accountability and oversight. We've got a new inspector general, as we create these new community foot patrols and business corridors and community areas and improve the safety for our businesses, our residents, and our visitors, as we hold ourselves accountable internally with cross-departmental partnership meetings where departments come together with a goal focused on how we deliver together as a city, internally and externally, on public safety. Stronger accountability, building on that gun violence resolution, addressing the police misconduct, and working to give deeper love and investment, resources, and response to our community that deserves it, from East to West Oakland, from the flatlands to the hills.
Thank you. I would personally like to thank each and every one of you for joining us this evening. Again, for the candidates that are here, for the people who are participants just in that are going, giving great dialogue in the chat. You all could have been anywhere, but you chose to be here tonight. And I have to tell you that we had about 75% participation rate versus how many people we registered today. So thank you. We were able to get a lot of questions answered. We got to hear a lot of different perspectives. I hope you all are walking away with an understanding, a clarity of these candidates, their vision, their goals, their platforms. My name is Shaniqua Badger. It has been a pleasure to serve as your moderator this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Oh, I yield the floor to the legislative chair, Eric Harris.
And I just want to say, as the chair of the Legislative Committee and first VP of ARPB, it was a pleasure to hear all of the candidates. And I truly believe in the theory of the dialectic. We do, that every one of you has a piece of the truth, and we're trying to put it together. And hopefully we'll be able to endorse a candidate if we can. If not, we'll vote for you all. But thank you for your honesty and your direct answers to the questions. We appreciate you. Anyway, Madam President, is that it, or you want to?
We're done. Have a great evening, everyone, and thank you so much. And we hope
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
All right, bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Okay, bye.
All right, thank you for having us.
Hey, good
That
job.
was awesome, awesome.
Thank you.
Bye, Monty.
Bye, Bubba Greg. It's a
Good
pleasure.
to see you.
You too.
Thanks, Georgia. Nice to meet you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Real quick question, George, are you part of the Marcus Bookstore Richardson family?
No,
No, okay.
Nope. Nope.
It's a bunch of them.
I'm Richardson by marriage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right. Hey, good night, y'all.
good night.
Night.
And